political success. Those things are replicated. Jews are free, and they are friends of those of the Arab communities, where we have an Arab community in Argentina, descendants from people from Lebanon and Syria, and they, together, they are in the political party. There isn't. Now, always, in any place in the world where there are Jewish communities, there are anti-Jewish manifestations, as I say, by people that we shouldn't be so people.
Mr. Ambassador, would you have a tangential question? Would you have any comment on the disruptive events in Chile recently?
Well, Chile has military government since 1973, and they plan to have a whole election in 1998. This is a very optimistic situation for Pinochet to think he can hold it for long. And of course, after a while, at the beginning, they had a rather successful economic performance at the beginning. And it is true that in Chile, there was a tremendous opposition to the Allende government. They were part of the country. The country was parted in two. Those who were for Allende and those who were against Allende, and there was a tremendous. Chile could have had a civil war, and a very important, because the country was parted in two. And that is the reason that I think why the regime of Pinochet has been so tight and continues to be so tight, because the opposition is very, very strong. Now, while he had an economic success, and 50% of the people, at least, were supporting him, things were okay. But then it started to slip, went downhill, and the Chile situation is very bad. So this is done by the population. And now the people who supported him don't support him or less and less, and he seems to be in trouble, as it has been seen these past days, where you have all of a sudden resistance and riots and strikes.
Yeah. Might be a little general, maybe slightly political strife in the last few decades. Here your response to the charge of the Latin character itself has been reversed to democratic republican government in favor strongly.
You say that the character of the Latin, like a strong man, as a head of state. That's what it means.
Rather
I don't think it's the case. I don't think they, you could say, you could have a point in saying that Latins do not like or collective government, for instance, like you have in Switzerland, and you had in Uruguay a formula where there was a council, or formulas where, like in other places, for instance, you have in India or in the United Kingdom, you have the Queen. In India, you have the president, but there's a head of state who's the prime minister, who's the real, actual head of state. The same thing happens in Spain. In Latin American countries, our constitutions are copied from that of the United States. So we have been preached about democracy since our constitutions were established. Now, since we are Latin, we didn't obey them.
Mr. Ambassador, certainly you will agree that the rate of inflation in Argentina has a very strong detrimental effect upon your economy, and therefore your ability to meet foreign payments of loans outstanding. Can you tell me the remedial steps that the government of Argentina has taken in the past year or so to try to alleviate those problems and get the rate of inflation down to something that's more manageable?
It's a very difficult thing in developing countries to check effectively the rate of inflation, especially in the case of Argentina, which is the worst case on record. And there is unemployment, there is tremendous social pressure for increases in wages. The power of purchase is very low, and then the government takes measures of keeping the utilities low. But this is done through subventions, which in turn are provoke the issuance of money, and then it's a kind of a vicious circle. So that's why the International Monetary Fund, when they gave a standby credit to our country and to every country, asked for austerity measures, and they immediately obliged countries, compelled countries to increase the utilities. But of course, this is very difficult because immediately you have the unions come and say, well, the poor are those who suffer more. And so you have to strike a balance. You have to strike a balance, and this government, very hard, is trying, and it has to do it because otherwise the International Monetary Fund doesn't disburse the money that it has to give you in order to help us to pay the foreign debts. There's been also tremendous overspending of government big projects like highways, for instance. This has been stopped in Argentina. There are also government administrated enterprises in certain areas which are not very well managed, and these are being closed in some cases, and in other cases bought by private enterprises who normally are better administrated than government.
Mr. Greenbaum?
I would like to know whether your country is involved in the nuclear arms buildup.
Argentina has the most renowned institute of nuclear research for peace and use of all developing countries. Brazil is another country having also a very important institute. Now we think that as any country wants to make any progress, has to have a guarantee for its energy problems. And although we are self-sufficient in oil, everybody knows that at a certain point you will run out of oil. So in the case of Argentina, we established this Institute of Research in the early 40s. And many scientists have come and continue to come from Scandinavian countries. And is very well renowned at the Institute of the Atomic Institute in Vienna. So Argentina has a nuclear plan for peaceful purposes, but not at all to make a bomb. Any bomb that Argentina could make, for instance, if some mad military would decide that we would like to make a bomb in order to beat the British, well, that would be impossible because they would always have a bigger one. Absolutely. How can we do anything of the kind? And we are proud of our institute. We are proud as a developing country to have an institute. And I must say again that many of our public enterprises are not well managed. But this one is a model, and this has been recognized by foreigners. That's why there is help for the research and the production from Canada, from Germany, Soviet Union, and we used to receive from the United States. And today I got the information that a certain element which only can be used for peaceful purposes has been also received from Germany, thankful to the United States. But we do not wish to cut our progress in this area. It is a scientific project, and we do not like normally others who do not stop making real bombs for war coming and tell us you shouldn't go on with your little business.
Let me ask you a question. Since you're so advanced there, have you figured out what to do with nuclear waste material?
It's a matter there is no open discussion as you have in the north part of the hemisphere where you are constantly threatening each other of having a nuclear war. We haven't the consciousness to discuss every day and to parade every day about that subject. So, and the quantities that are made are so low that I don't know really we concerned about waste.
While there are many questions still outstanding, it is 10 after 7. So we are going to have to end promptly. For that, I apologize to everyone in the room. Mr. Ambassador, for a series of very respectful and sensitive answers to the questions. We thank you very much.
I've been talking around the country, in many cities, in other counties of foreign affairs, in universities, in trade centers, but I never had such intelligent and demanding questions I have board. Has affected many countries besides Argentina. It is hoped that this downhill economic trend will awaken the international community and lead to the search of in-depth solutions to correct the failures of the present international monetary and financial system. In the meantime, we are committed to facing the situation in the way we have always done, by paying our international debts. This is the position of the current transitional government, and it is also that of all the main presidential candidates. We are in a privileged position to overcome our financial difficulties in the near future. Our productive apparatus is intact, and today there are signs that a reasonable industrial recovery is on the way. Our main source of foreign exchange for meeting our international obligations is agricultural production. This sector of the economy has doubled in the last 5 years because of improvements in productivity, and there is every indication that it will continue to grow. Argentina has no energy shortage. The export of substantial amounts of natural gas is in the offing, and new oil wells plus offshore exploration may toward the end of the century make Argentina a member of the club of oil exporting countries. Now I would like to turn to Argentina's relation with the United States. In spite of occasional differences, our relationship has by and large been cordial. Until the South Atlantic War, there were no reasons for anti-American hostility. The U.S. armed forces have never intervened in Argentina, nor we have been victims in the past of the so-called big state policies. However, our friendship has been marked by something. One of these differences is historic, a consequence of our perception of the role Argentina should play in the world stage. This perception dates back to before the turn of the century. In those days, my country's growth and prosperity were based on the export of agricultural produce. We found a natural market for these products in Europe. The US was not our market. It was our competitor. When we sold meat and grain in Europe, we received in return the machinery and capital we needed for our development. During the same period, the United States, which was developing at an even faster rate, became the most powerful nation in the hemisphere and asserted the right to primacy in it. Argentina was inclined to ignore this assertion and even to challenge it by strengthening its ties with Europe. My country's rapid growth and prosperity took it in the direction of self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency was mirrored in our national policy by a conviction that Argentina should not participate in world conflicts. Of course, this independence ran directly counter to Washington's Pan-American policy and leadership, which Argentina opposed. Specifically, we have always asserted our opposition to intervention in the affairs of other Latin American countries, and we took a neutral position in both world wars. Later, Argentine-US relations became clouded during the Carter administration. President Carter may have undertaken his human rights crusade with the most sincere intentions, but most people in my country saw it in a different light. Argentines are intensely nationalistic, and they regarded that policy as intolerable intervention. This became especially true when we perceived that a double standard was being applied. We felt that nations upon which the United States placed a higher strategic value did not feel the weight of human rights reprisals to nearly the same extent Argentina did. Recently, a group of United States congressmen visiting Argentina stated that our country still did not qualify for certification for the renewal of the supply of military equipment. This statement was denounced, and the congressmen called inspectors by our press and by political leaders, even those on the left who normally challenge the government on human rights issues. As for the South Atlantic War itself, I must admit that it has affected our relations. Moreover, it has poisoned hemispheric relations. Argentina was not the war's only victim. The inter-American system also suffered, and disturbing questions were raised about the United States' role in it. It is far too early to assess how long the impact of the Malvinas War will affect the relations with the United States. We cannot ignore the fact that the active pursuit of negotiations to achieve a peaceful transfer of effective sovereignty will become a crucial foreign policy goal of all governments in the future, as it is now the case. Argentina's claim in the island is a valid one and a popular cause embraced by every Argentine from childhood, a cause to which civilians and military are equally committed. During the ceremony of presentation of credentials, President Reagan and I exchanged messages favoring the restoration of our normal relations. What steps have been taken to that effect? Last fall, at the United Nations, the United States voted for a resolution calling for future negotiations on the Malvinas. Your country is now committed, we understand, to exerting pressure on the United Kingdom to sit down with Argentina at the negotiating table. The solution that does justice to both our countries should be sought. This will put an end to a focus of tension in the southern area of our hemisphere. Another important step was the constructive support given by the United States to Argentina's negotiations of its international financial obligations. Those developments are heartening indications of the will to establish a cooperative relationship. The recent Malvinas War has deeply shaken our country. It has forced us to face and overcome painful situations. It may have changed us more than we realize. After years of internal strife, that painful war, which in itself added moral bitterness, may have nevertheless acted as a catalyst. It seems as if the Argentine people have matured. Extremists who wish to change the political and social structure of the country have learned that violence generates chaos, and that chaos is ultimately repudiated by most citizens. We have also rediscovered that if order is enforced without due process of law, it is neither possible to cement a national unity that includes both civilians and military, thus jeopardizing the need for reconciliation, which is a prerequisite for both the democratic reconstruction of the country and the stability of its institutions. Furthermore, the confrontation with reality brought about by the South Atlantic War has awakened us from our somewhat simplistic conception of the laws that govern international relations. Buenos Aires is not the center of the world, as many Argentines feel. Relations between countries are what they are, not what we would like them to be. We should endeavor to honor the best traditions of our foreign policy, based upon the principles of universality, non-intervention, respect for international law, peaceful settlement of international disputes. Within the non-aligned movement, we wish to exert a moderate influence in order to have such principles upheld by all nations. Our bilateral relations with the United States will have a better chance of returning to normal when, after the restoration of democratic rule in Argentina, the above values which we share with you are reinstated as the creed of our foreign policy. Yet the United States should also play its part by understanding the limitations of a conception of world affairs that focuses primarily on East-West confrontation, and the inherent danger of assigning its Atlantic commitments the highest priority. When dealing with your neighbors' countries in the American continent, to the south, other factors must be taken into account, such as the tragedy of underdevelopment and the evil of the remnants of colonialism. It is imperative that the United States rethink their policy of politically react only when its immediate strategic interests are affected. The United States should be more understanding of our anxieties, and it should participate fully of the inter-American solidarity shown by the other countries south of the border. We are very well aware that the United States is heavily committed throughout the world. Yet it seems to us that it has somewhat neglected its pledge to the charge of the Organization of American States. Thus, the South Atlantic War found the United States and the Latin American countries aligned on opposite sides. many other reasons, but among them, as Ambassador Saul Linowitz put it in the recent Inter-American Dialogue at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, and I quote, is the inability of North Americans and Latin Americans to communicate with and to understand each other. The United States tends to take Latin America for granted, or to use the regions to score points and teach lessons, but not to build constructive relations. And he went on, moreover, the United Nations seems to ignore the fact, the United States seems to ignore the fact, that constructive relations with Latin America are as important for the United States as they are for us. And what happens in Latin America significantly affects the security, welfare, culture, and politics of the United States. By the same token, of course, we must accept that the march of events in our Latin American region is powerfully influenced by the United States. I personally coincide with Ambassador Linowitz and feel that friendship and cooperation must be pursued in the relations of the Latin American countries with the United States, provided we all do it with full respect of our dignity, our independence, and of the principle of non-intervention in our respective internal affairs. Thank you.
Certainly thank you for a forthright and comprehensive statement. The ambassador has been good enough to agree to answer questions. We'll have this session end promptly at 10 minutes after 7. Yes, sir.
One of the things that has concerned me, I think the fact that Argentina has been a haven for many Nazis. How do you explain the fact that Argentina has welcomed several 100,000 Nazis?
Germans, after the war, came to Argentina immediately after the war. There weren't thousands, but there were some who tried and succeeded to escape from Europe, and they chose not only Argentina, but 2 or 3 other countries of Latin America. The last of these has been found very recently in Bolivia. It was when the battleship Garcia was sunk in the Battle of Punta del Este in front of Montevideo. Those sailors and captains and marines they entered Argentina as refugees, and they settled down. Most of them were very young people, and without any Nazi idea they were settled. But it is true that there were who came with passports they found in Europe, and I guess it's just a question of people who escaped, and it wasn't an official policy, although that government was a dictatorship, a military dictatorship, which is those few that stayed in Argentina. And that regime was a repressive regime. But I can't tell you more on that. It was a policy, and we are talking about how many years ago? 40 years ago. It's not the case anymore.
I want to go back, not 40 years, 50 years. You mentioned that up to 50 years ago, approximately, Argentina was the leading country in South America, democratic institutions. I remember at high school, the Argentine foreign minister of the United Nations so successfully dominated, saying that he was given the Nobel Prize. Argentina is the country in South America, like the United States, the country in North. 50 years, this has continued. How long do you think it would take for right democratic move, a democratic lead will start next year. So I think we will face something bad.
I think that I tried to be clear in saying that we have tremendous expectations on the fact that we will have a constitutional government back in Argentina next January. There's tremendous enthusiasm in Buenos Aires for this achievement. And in these days, there are taking place in Buenos Aires, Argentina, the whole of Argentina, primaries for the selected candidates for president. And they are breaking all the records in the primaries. First registered, never before, 10 times and 20 times the number of people who registered in 1973, that was last election. 20, 30 times, and sometimes even more, people are registered in each party. Then after the registration period, which took place in the last 3 months, the elections are taking place every Sunday in different provinces. And they are beating all the records of attendance, which show tremendous desire to put an end definitely to the very unstable system that we have. And I agree with you, completely agree, that in those days, up to 1930, we were an extremely progressive country, which although we couldn't compete with you, but we could have become a very progressive and a leading country in Latin America, and we moved in a good direction. And we sincerely hope, because we feel that the only way of recuperating that is by having elections, electing a government, having it for the 6-year term, and then having another 6-year term, which hasn't happened. 2 6-year terms haven't happened since 1928. The last civilian president who succeeded a previous one of 6 years, was in 1928. So everybody in Argentina is with great enthusiasm working very hard for that election and hoping that we consolidate the democracy. The only way.
Yes. Well, if you would, we don't have very much time, and if you would ask a question, please.
Well, I just want to say that Jews were also committed into the country in greater numbers than the United States and Nazis into Argentina.
Yes.
Mr. Bester, I was delighted to hear your comments on the government is facing up to the history in Argentina. I'm calling to mind the reported things of people having been sentenced in recent times in terms of jail, and yet when their sentences are over, it's a human rights thing, they're not released. They're still kept. It's known that they're there, they're not missing, but they're still kept in jail. And it's also been reported that people are charged or held without charges and also being held in jail without being brought to trial. These are two very serious things, and you don't address them. I do hope you would, and I'd like to hear and see it, because I too feel that these things are very, very vital, and you ought to restore democracy.
Very true. During the 70s, there was this terrorist action in Argentina, and the government took very harsh measures in order to beat terrorism. There were up to 7,000 people in jail, and many in the condition you explained. In the past 6 months, that number has been reduced to 350, more or less. There were lots who were released at Christmas and then afterwards. There still are And this is under a law of state of siege, which was put into effect by the constitutional government of Isabel Perón in 75, when terrorism was very active. And it has been lifted. It will be lifted after the 3rd of October 30th. And everybody will be released on January 31st. That's all I can say, but it is the case. It's still, I must add, that every month there are some releases. But this is not enough. Everybody should be released. I agree completely with you, and this will happen after October 30th.
Mr. Miller?
So that's Argentina is a wealthy country. People live there as well. A large middle class, it's not very much of a class. The clash is many of it. Why do terrorism erupted in Argentina in the 1970s, late 1970s? Why did it occur there?
I've asked myself the question. I've asked myself the question because you do not have in Argentina those conditions that explain was tremendous poverty. But it's strange because the terrorists, most of the leaders of the terrorist organizations were middle class and upper class young professionals. The leader of the Trotskyist Ejército Revolucionario del Pueblo, called Herb, studied at Harvard, and doctors. So some were militants, also of the middle classes, of extreme right organizations. All of a sudden changed and they went into extreme left. Others were Trotskyist and communists. Others with the spirit of adventure, non-conformists, and I guess that, for instance, in subversion Argentina was influenced also among students by what happened in France, in the universities in France in 1968. Contestation, but not necessarily people coming from the shanty town. And this is a phenomenon that will be studied. I can't give you the answer. You had also the same kind of terrorism in Italy. It's exactly the same case. You had it in Germany, and you have it in Spain. So I haven't got the answer.
Yes, sir.
Two of my neighbors are from Argentina, and most recent I talked to, he said that the number of foreigners
Immigrants came to Argentina at the same time they came from Europe, but more or less at the same time they came to the United States. Thousands and thousands before the turn of the century. Especially they came from Italy, especially from South Italy, and from Spain. But they also came from Central Europe, Polish, Jewish, lots of Russian Jewish people and Polish Jewish people came to Argentina in those days. Germans, but not many. The bulk is Italian and Spanish. So the Argentine ethnical composition is heavily affected or influenced by the presence of descendants of Italians and the Spanish, which mixed with the natives, which were very few. Argentina was a very underpopulated part of the South American country. Great plains with no gold like in or silver like in Peru and the Inca Empire or the Aztecs in Mexico. It was very poor with nomad Indians, very few. So this population is mostly of European origin. And one can say that must be around 80%, 85% of early European origin, the whole population of Argentina. But we are not very much populated. We have 25 million for an enormous territory.
Mr. Ambassador, I believe that your country is negotiating with the holding company that owns the island before you invade it, to purchase it from them. Do you know anything about it? And the second thing is, what if this country stopped interest payments on your loan for the year 2000 so that you could get out of the financial hole? What would that do?
Well, the first question, I know that there was a very rich Argentine who at a certain point disguised himself and went to London, disguised as somebody who is not Argentine, and tried to do many tricks that most of Argentine things were very badly wrong. And he didn't succeed. They found out, and the Falklands Island Company, as it was impossible to buy. Now, if the United States would stop charging us interest for the money we owe to the United States, we would become millionaires very soon.
Earlier on in your comment, I thought very sensitive about the difficulty of accounting on the 28th of April, the military council issued a statement that called the final document of the military campaign the war efficiency. Not going into detail, but the document essentially said that all those who disappeared during the period of the late 70s are considered now dead following judicial administration. The document denied that there were any secret detentions. And the document refused to accept any responsibility for accounting for the nature of the deaths and circumstances of the deaths of people who are disappeared and turned to this document was announced, as you may know, broadly by human rights groups as a sort of cynical evasion of responsibility by the military company. And there have been rumors circulating for several months that a deal of some kind was struck between the military and the political parties in which an amnesty of some kind will be granted to the members of the military so that they will not be subject to prosecution for crimes committed in the state. My question is, Poet has said there can be no peace in this country unless there is peace in the mind of men. Can there be peace in the minds of Argentinians until that peace is fully and ultimately done?
It's a very, very sensitive way of putting the case. The case is the most delicate. The issue is the most delicate issue in this decision, from military rule to civilian rule. There are 4 kinds of reactions in Argentina on this problem. 4 positions, let's say 4 positions. One position, which is families of the disappeared and the human rights of included, which would like the harshest, which is the most severe kind of accountability of those who may prove to be responsible for success, and those who obey the orders, and those who are defeated, whatever they do. Then you have another position, which is that of the political parties having the possibility of winning the election. Which are 2. One called the Peronistas and the other the Radicales. Their position, which is very much in favor of Argentina recuperated democracy and, of course, with democracy, human rights first. Their position is that those who have claims, those families having claims, should go to the courts in Argentina, which they're actually starting to do now, and put the claim to the court, but not. They do not want. What they say, we do not want Nuremberg. That's the position of the political party. Then you have another position, which is the position of the church, which is probably interpreting the greater number of persons in Argentina, which is preaching for what they call reconciliation. And they would like the military to admit what they have done irregularly, and to promise to take a very firm position, but they want to refuse it. And they want a reconciliation between Argentines. Argentines, as I said, have had violence of all kinds, and they want to look forward. They don't want to look back. So, still, it is felt that those who are responsible should be tried. It is felt by the political parties, and the church doesn't speak of trial, but of admission of guilt and the commitment not to ever get into practices, which are absolutely not accepted by Christian life. And then you have the position of the military, who they would like to look forward to Argentina accept the fact that they were fighting against subversion, which was a very lethal subversion, which is true. And they fought subversion with lethal methods. And they say their position is, we have done this to save Argentina from extremism. And of course, extremism, no democracy, and so on. That's their position. And they would like not to be tried for what they consider they were doing the good. So this is a very extremely delicate situation, and it's very difficult to evaluate the situation from the outside. We want peace. I agree with those who want peace. We don't want to have vengeance. It is not Christian to torture. It is not Christian to be revenged.
Mr. Ambassador, the question of the Malvinas Islands appears to be an open ending, in that the population by media accounts, the population of Argentina seems to be very involved in the question of the Malvinas Islands, and also really believe that the islands did belong to Argentina. In that regard, no matter what happens, the outcome in their minds will appear to be that the Malvinas Islands belongs to Argentina. If any other plan is worked out, what impact is that going to have on the people of Argentina? And what are the people of Argentina thinking about at this time?
This is tremendous emotional at this point. There was a war, the war was lost. And but even before that, before the war, every Argentine always believed the islands belonged to us. There are 400 miles from our coast. There are 8,000 miles from the British. Every Argentine in Argentina, since the boy, the baby, knows about the Malvinas, where they are, and to whom they belong. 99% of the British, when the war started, didn't know where they were located. So, the feeling is that we have to continue to put pressure on the world community to get the islands back to us. They were taken by the British by force in 1832, 1833, and they were, the Argentines who were there. There weren't very many, but they were there with our governor there and our flag there, which this was the Victorian days. They were expelled, the British came and stayed there for the last time. We always claimed since 1833. But we will pursue the claim interpreting the Argentine treaty in the United Nations, in the OAS, in the non-aligned movement, everywhere. And we have the support, because you were saying the Argentines and Argentines. We have the support. The same way we feel about it. All the Latin American countries feel the same thing. They recognize the sovereignty of Argentina over the islands. Now we understand that, by the way, the United States has not taken a position on the sovereignty of the islands. It doesn't take a position, whether it is of Great Britain or the United States or Argentina. Neither has France, neither have other European countries. We pursue the matter in those international forums. And the United Nations has approved the resolution supporting the negotiations. So we want the negotiations. And we want the Americans to have leverage on the British and our friends. Nobody is better placed than the Americans today for the peaceful negotiations, in order to have one day the islands returned to us. But no Argentine will ever abandon the idea to push to have our islands back, because they belong to us. As simple as that.
Mr. Stern?
Mr. Ambassador, would you discuss Argentina's claims to Antarctica or to parts of Antarctica, and discuss whether there's a potential for further disputes with the United States because of these claims?
I don't think so. There's the Antarctic Pact, which includes the United States, Argentina, Chile, Soviet Union, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Japan. There's a very civilized Antarctic Pact, which everybody respects, and which has to be revised, considered again at the end of this century. Everybody is committed to help each other there, not to spoil it, to respect wildlife, to have, as we have meteorological institutes there, so have the British, so have others. So I don't think there's room for any problem, and when it comes to see what happens with the treaty at the end of the century, we will see there are other countries who are showing interest also in Antarctica. No problem.
Mr. Ambassador, can you tell us the position of Jews in Argentina? We have heard stories of heads of families who have disappeared and not been heard of again, and I think that Nazi influence is important in this case.
Among the disappeared, which officially by the standards and the accounts of the human rights organizations and the Vatican and the State Department are around 6,000. There are members of the Jewish community. The Jewish community is very large now. In Buenos Aires itself, there are more than 400 to 500,000 people, and they are scattered all over the country. So nobody supports that. Those things are replicated. Jews are free, and they are friends of those of the Arab communities, where we have an Arab community in Argentina, descendants from people from Lebanon and Syria, and they, together they are in the political party. There isn't. Now always, in any place in the world where there are Jewish communities, there are anti-Jewish manifestations, as I say, by people that they shouldn't be the same with other people.
Mr. Ambassador, would you have a tangential question? Would you have any comment on the disruptive events in Chile recently?
Well, Chile has military government since 1973.